I have learned from Irwin for many, many years. We have been dear friends for the last 25 years. It gives me great honor and joy to invite Irwin.
Okay, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be here. This is one of the most beautiful davenings in the United States. Actually, the most beautiful davenings anywhere. And thank you, Rolly. Rolly's been a dear friend for a long time. And actually, I consider Rolly my rabbi. You know, rabbis have to have rabbis too. And I consider Rolly my rabbi. And I also want to thank Felicia. She's here somewhere. She was here. And, you know, I've learned a lot of Torah from her over the years. And from Ari, and here somewhere. And my father's a chazan, by the way. Was a chazan. And I have been elevated by Ari over more than 2 decades now. So it's a very warm place for me to come. I'm very honored. And, of course, Mazel Tov, right, to Yael and Jonathan and to the Madelon family, and Mazel Tov to Lev. I know he's going to be bar mitzvah at some point, and he's somewhere here, and beautiful. I know you're going to do great, and Mazel Tov to you. And, you know, it's a lot of beginnings, I guess, right? It's, Lev, it's a beginning for you. It's some sort of new stage of responsibility that you take on by definition by becoming a bar mitzvah. And Yael and Jonathan, some new stage of building a life together, whatever was going on before. Once you stand under that chuppah, you know, and you come out of that chuppah, it's a beginning. So there's a lot of beginnings today, and of course we're at the beginning of the cycle of the Torah reading too. And you know, we all know this story, right? It starts with chaos and moves to order, and then you're in the Garden of Eden, and then you have Adam and Eve. And I want to do a riff on the Adam and Eve story. There are a lot of interpretations. If you Google Adam and Eve interpretations, literally Adam and Eve interpretations, as of yesterday, 10,149,000 something, right, entries. Now that doesn't mean there's 10 million interpretations, but it means that a lot of people have been thinking about and interpreting and working on this Garden of Eden story and the Adam and Eve story. Of course, that indicates what holiness is. A holy text is not a text with one meaning. A holy text is a text with inexhaustible meanings. And the Adam and Eve story has inexhaustible meanings. I want to offer sort of one take, and I think it's appropriate for today, and that is, it's a meditation on love. The Adam and Eve story is a meditation on love, and it's actually a very successful and a very profound love story. And you know, it's the founding story, one of the founding stories of Western civilization. So how we tell that story begins to shape up. As much as we author these sorts of great stories, those stories at some point have authority over us. So the way in which we tell the story makes a very big difference to us. If we tell the story as a fall from grace, that's one understanding of what it means to be human. If we tell the story as a fundamental story that life is always about temptation, then that's another take on the story. If we tell it in a feminist way, if we tell it in a patriarchal way, if we tell it as the fall from oneness into duality, these are all different tellings, and each telling makes a difference in who we become as individual people and as communities and societies. So I want to tell the Garden of Eden story as a love story. A love story that begins in falling in love and moves to standing in love. That begins from automatic love to more conscious, intentional love. So we all know how Adam and Eve meet, right? You know the story. It's the way most people meet. They were set up. I mean, it was a sort of cosmic J-date. But you know, any J-date that works, any of these virtual ways of meeting people that work, has a sort of cosmic pretension anyway. Well, their chemistry was fantastic. That first night must have really been something, because when Adam wakes up from a very, very deep sleep, he describes Eve as bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. Love at first sight. Remember love at first sight, some of us? We've had that experience, but here's the thing about love at first sight. It's always blinding. It's a paradise, so to speak. But inevitably, as life unfolds, we begin to have and express our own and different desires. Our eyes begin to open up, and we see ourselves and each other differently and more clearly. And then the question becomes, can we transform circumstances, happenstance, luck, the unearned gift of falling in love into a chosen destiny? Can automatic love become conscious love? Can we transform being chosen by some inevitable, mysterious, uncontrollable, beautiful, terrifying attraction into intentionally chosen intimacy? Well, there's only one way. And that is, we need to eat from the tree of knowledge, the Eitz Hadat. And Eve does just that. And it's very quick. She sees it. She desires it. She takes it. She eats it. She enjoys it. She shares it. And what's the result? Well, we know the result happens in our lives. Our eyes open. But when one person eats from a tree of knowledge and learns and grows and understands something about themselves and about life, it gets messy. It's no longer bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. There's difference and separation and distance. Sometimes it could be a realization that one's garden isn't paradise. Or sometimes it's that paradise isn't all it's cracked up to be. That we want something more from life. It could be some part of our past that erupts into our consciousness, demands our attention, lest it self-destroy us or distort us. It could be a health crisis, a loss of a job, a death that changes our trajectory, or perhaps a transgression, a disobedience, a betrayal that destabilizes everything. These are the sort of bracing challenges of life that if we choose to fully taste the fruit of them, they do become sources of insight and wisdom. They open our eyes and we change and we grow. Often in our relationships, we eat from the tree of knowledge at different times, and so we grow and provoke. We become impatient, and we ripen at different paces. When we see new truths about our lives and evolve to new levels of awareness, we inevitably become unsure where the other person is. Where are we in relation to someone else? We find ourselves on different pages, not understanding what the other is seeing or not seeing, and what's happening. You know, that's the dance of closeness and distance and being lost and being found, of chaos and order, of absence and presence. It's the defining movement of love itself. And if we're courageous, then we ask the very first question of the Torah. Ayeka, where are you? Now it's interesting, the Torah doesn't tell us the tone of voice of that question. Think about it for a second. You've read this story hundreds of times. How do you hear, where are you? Do you hear it like this? Where are you? Stern, judgmental, severe. Or do you hear the question that is asked of Adam and Eve as more plaintive, more curious, more vulnerable? Hey, where are you? Like something's happening. Something's changing. Like, where are you? When our eyes are opened and we see things clearly, we're exposed. We often see ours or the other person's vulnerabilities, their hurts, their craziness, their madness. After all, the only people who strike us as really normal are the people we don't know very well. And so by Bosheshu, they were embarrassed. How many times are we embarrassed in real, genuine love relationships? And if our experience is anything like Adam and Eve, our first response is to hide from each other as we feel exposed. And when that breeze blows through, it's cold. But here's the thing, Eve shares the fruit. She shares her newly acquired da'at, her newly acquired knowing and awareness, and it always destabilizes things. And then it's a beautiful story. They cover up. They cover each other. They protect each other just enough so that they can come out of hiding. And of course, Even when we come out and hiding, there's a lot of jockeying and there's a lot of bobbing and weaving. Why did you do that? You did it. She did it. He did it. They did it. It happened. It's your fault. I haven't changed. You've changed. But we know the story. And we know our story. Blame, even if justified, and most of the time blame is justified. But here's the thing, and this goes politically too. Always, no matter what, even if justified, is always a disavowal of complicity. Either unconsciously or unconsciously creating the very challenge in front of us. But here's the key. Adam and Eve walk out of the garden together, acknowledging, living through, leaning into, and bearing the consequences of their opened eyes, of the hard experiences of life that do make our skin, our ore, a little tougher, but also make us wiser and kinder. Now imagine Adam and Eve leaving. I can imagine Adam turning to Eve and saying, honey, we are living through a moment of transition. And isn't that the ongoing drama of love? We fall in love, and we want and expect security and dependability and stability and permanence. And we think finally now we're going to settle down. And we can't help but feel that way. We imagine that love will protect us from the insecurity and determinacy and fragility of life. But the Adam and Eve love story teaches us that enduring love is the riskiest thing of all. Eve trusted her vision and her desire and chose awareness and knowledge over obedience to convention, conformity, habit, the sort of default of life, as Edenic as life might be. And here's the thing, she lived to tell about it, right? And Adam sees Eve's eyes opened and feels her search for some place yet to be determined and realizes, I can't live without her. And so he eats. And he metabolizes what she shares. And they were afraid. But enduring love is always unnerving and courageous. The paradox of love is the very security and stability we imagine love provides depends on how vulnerable we can be. The more enduring we want our love, the more we need to continuously leave the Garden of Eden. And once we leave, there is no going back. Those fiery kruvim are there. You cannot go back. Ignorance may be bliss, but awareness is messy. So Eve and Adam leave together, having digested a full range of emotions. Imagine all the feelings, disappointment and loss and grief and anger and fear. And what do? What's the first thing they do? Vayeda Adam et Chava. Literally, and Adam and Eve knew each other more deeply. And note the same word, Eitz Hadat, tree of knowledge, and Vayeda, know. It's the same knowledge. Herein is the deepest purpose of love. And obviously you have enough rough, so I'm inviting you to think about this. Drawn together by some mysterious attraction, we're also drawn together by yearning to know ourselves and each other ever more deeply. Because the shared purpose of love ultimately is to eat from the tree of knowledge. That's why Adam and Eve don't eat from the tree of knowledge until after they're Eve and Adam. The sacred work of love is to help each other seek the truth about ourselves. And though our contemporary culture tells us that in order to love someone you need to understand them, it's not true. It's a lie. I'm married 40 years. In order to understand them, you need to love them. Ahava milkalkelet et hashura. Love upends the norm. It upends the sort of straight and narrow path. No wonder Adam and Eve are the central characters in the Sheva Brachot, the 7 blessings recited at the wedding ceremony under the chuppah. Their love navigates the swirls and the flows of unpredictability. And I'll conclude with this. It strikes me that a few days ago we ended the Torah with Moses unable to get into the promised land. And today we begin the Torah with Adam and Eve not being able to get back into the Garden of Eden. How bittersweet and exquisitely honest the Torah is. There's no home, capital H. Only a lot of homes, small h. There are no promised lands to finally reach once and for all, as the promised land is elusive. It's never the gotten land, it's always the promised land. And even when we arrive at promised lands, we soon realize there's plenty of struggle and far more promise. And just as there are no future promised lands to be reached in some once and for all triumphant fantasy, you know what? There is no Garden of Edens of the past to return in some restoration fantasy. From the moment Eve and Adam eat from the tree, from the moment they opened their eyes and woke up, they realized there's so much more to life than Eden. There's a world with all of its sacred messiness. Seems so Jewish and honest to the human experience, which may be why we're 16 million of 8 billion. Because however comforting it may be, there's no fetishized nostalgia for some long-lost perfect time. And there's no apocalyptic frenzy for some perfect future. All there is lech decha b'derech, living the way, wandering in the present. And maybe that's the definition of love. For us seeking imaginative and creative human beings, there's always going to be better places. Even when we think we're in the promised land or in the Garden of Eden, there's always a better place. And we struggle and wander to fashion that place. And so the only real question is, with whom do we want to wander? And with whom we choose to wander is who we love. Eve and Adam chose to wander together. God chose to wander with them. Yahel and Jonathan, you've chosen to wander together. Live by coming up and taking an aliyah and doing your haftorah and all the things you're going to do. You know what you did? You chose. You're going to be choosing with intention. You probably worked hard to get here. To wander with the Jewish people. And what makes BJ such a rare and loving community is you folks make an ongoing decision each and every day and each and every year to wander together with all the messiness. May we all eat and share from the tree of knowledge. May we continue to wander together, helping each other seek the truth about ourselves and build a better world. And may our love drive us up from Eden. Shabbat Shalom.
I just asked Irwin what is he doing next Shabbat.